Alright, so back to what I was saying earlier. Philosophical discussion is much more important than actually talking about Bloodborne. So human organization is inherently flawed because it's generally under the control of incompetent people. Not always. There are exceptions, of course, like the old Napoleon or Saladin or whoever. Wu Chi, Tai Kung, and so forth. Every competent person in the history of humanity, of which there are, I don't know, like 50 or so that actually rose to positions of prominence. Maybe more than that, but it just depends on how you define it, which winds up being debatable in some aspect. It's not really that debatable for military leaders, but it's pretty debatable for just like a mayor or whatever. Like, do you say, for instance, Machiavelli is an efficient and intelligent person? It's a very influential person, of course, but, and Machiavelli is sort of the root of fascism in some respect. That's not to say fascism is good, or the way fascism developed is absolutely not good, but one can't but admire their efficiency. And similar things could be said for communism, though communism, one can't but admire their inefficiency. So you wind up with an ironic situation, a twist of fate. The tongue turns and the mind as well. Alright, I do have to pay a little bit of attention here, just to make sure I don't get invaded, so bear with me. If I do get invaded, I will be quitting out of the menu and dodging that shit. Just since I don't feel like it right now, and I don't think Threaded Cane is that great of a weapon for PvP. It's probably okay, but it's no Holy Moonlight Sword or anything. If we do get invaded, it will be fairly quickly here. And we'll see how good I am at menu management. I have not done it for a while. And we did get invaded, okay, surprisingly. Alrighty. There's a decent chance that the invasion would not actually pop, but if it did pop, then it would have been annoying, so to preclude the annoyance, we avoid such things. Sometimes I don't avoid it, but lately I just haven't given much of a shit. That doesn't really work much of a fuck. Works a little bit better at night. Exactly. More of a verb versus a noun phrase there. Alrighty. We're a lot less likely to be invaded over here, but it's still not impossible. But we might as well kick this guy's ass since he decided to put himself in a weak position. I don't know if his buddy's gonna show up. The reason why we're less likely to be invaded is because it's based on proximity, in every case. I think it's also based on proximity in Dark Souls 3. In the first Dark Souls, it's just based on where you are. But it's literally based on proximity in this case, which makes it easier to facilitate duels and summons and what have you. Since there's no signs in this game, so you can't just say, oh, here's my sign. Instead you say, here's where I'm sitting. I don't know why this guy isn't doing anything, the silver beast back there. But I guess we'll just let him be, I don't care. Doesn't want to bother me, I'm not gonna bother him. We only have 7 blood vials, damn. But back to more efficiency spiel, I suppose. As long as I don't die in the swamp here. We do have choir outfit on, so I'm going to be pretty low on frenzy resistance, unfortunately. But while something like natural selection exists in nature, in at least some respect, it would be foolish to deny that entirely. It might not behave the way we think it behaves, but there is a development of adaptive traits over time. But in the case of humanity, since there is no predator, there is nothing to motivate. Since you're at the top of the food chain, there is nothing to motivate further progression of our abilities. So instead we rely on technology and so forth. But technology is a very imperfect method of advancement. So we should probably be focusing on like developing mental capacities and so forth, just making people more efficient through how they think and how they behave. But that isn't really something that concerns, you know, 99.5% of the populace or what have you. Even academics, it probably only concerns like 10% of academics, or 5% of academics. I know academics like to think of themselves as the future of all humanity or what have you, but it isn't actually so. Man. So we have very, very high insight, 98, one off tops. I don't really think there's any way I can avoid getting frenzied here. Let's just put on Grey Wolf. That's usually what I do. I don't know why I put on Cane Wrist. But bear with me here as we search some menus. But since humanity isn't organized in such a way where efficiency is the priority, there is no real sense of efficiency. There is no real advancement based on merit is the easiest way to describe it. So what is efficient and what is described as efficient, or what is deemed successful is not the same thing as what is efficient, or even close most of the time. The Crow Hat has more frenzy resistance than Dejura's hat, but that's okay. Alright, we'll see if this goes well or not. I'm dead? Yes, okay. Did not go well. It's been a while since I've died to that mob, actually. That does serve the purpose of refilling our blood vials. And since the bell light is already dead, we don't have to worry about getting invaded, so whatever, I don't care. It saves us. We lose probably like 30 or 40 seconds instead of gaining. Just because we don't have to go back to the Hunter's Dream now. Assuming we don't die again. If we die again, that would be bad. We basically died to terrain there, but that's okay. I'm laying back a little bit now. So that probably means my voice will be a little bit less audible and the fan might be picked up by the mic a little bit more pervasively. I won't always be laying back, but sometimes I just feel the need when in a state of tedium, I suppose. Need to relax. I guess I could describe it in the context of fighting games. That's probably an easier way to do things than just making it wholly abstract. Wholly abstract is hard to understand. At least from a mass perspective. But let's use a concrete example, that's what they call those. To use a business bullshit term. Oh hey, Fine Notes actually did something. So in fighting games, there's players that focus on like execution, but execution is just a process of repetition. It doesn't actually indicate any brain process or how fast you pick up execution. It might indicate how smart you are, but just being good at execution doesn't make you smart. It just means you really like doing the same thing over and over and over, etc. But like things like footsies and spacing and reactions are actually sort of based on intellectual capacity to some extent. I know that sort of belays what everybody thinks about shooters, like how fast people react in shooters. But shooters, it's more a twitch thing, In a fighting game, it's sort of something that you can expect to happen before it happens, which means it can be sort of intellectually processed. Of course, to generate that kind of perception, you might actually be better off, say, using a methamphetamine or what have you. That's a very common thing in professional sports. So it would surprise me if somebody who had like amazing reactions wasn't a cokehead or what have you. In the fighting game community, as silly as that sounds, but if you can accelerate how your brain's calculating shit, then that will also improve your reactions. It will also deteriorate your brain matter and make you a fucking moron in the end. But in the short term, the benefits are countless. And in certain professional sports, those kinds of things are totally acceptable, actually. In most, they're not. But they're kind of... In every professional sport or Olympic athlete thing, there's an like, everyone expects you to cheat on some level, at least in certain sports. There's probably some, or is this not the case? But, for example, Novak Djokovic is like a paragon of physical stature. But he's probably doing something, right? Or at some point, he must have at some point in his life, because he's just been raised to be an athlete for his entire existence. So there must have been some exploitative function to make himself better. Or if he got injured, to make sure he got less injured, or he recovered quicker, which is a very common thing. That's the Andy Pettit excuse. But same thing in fighting games. If you wanted to boost your reactions, you could probably do it through foreign substances. But sort of understanding and reading your opponent is all going to be based on how smart you are. But something like execution or preparation is just going to be based on how much time you have and how fast you get bored with doing the same thing over and over, which aren't necessarily tied to how capable you are. So somebody with the science perspective, as it were, that's what they call it, science perspective. That's all I'm saying. Well, actually, the science players tend to be dumber, a lot dumber than the reads-based players, just in terms of their ability to perceive things. And there are players that sort of tread the line between those two. I think every player that's pretty good cuts off their execution preparation at some point and instead focuses on preparing for other players, which is something that's respectable. But sorry if that didn't make any sense. Also, I've just been standing here for like 5 minutes, but I wanted to articulate myself. Also, we had to sit here and wait for the poison to run out. So there you go. That's me spieling for a while. Hopefully it made sense to somebody. I'm sure someone will either watch the stream or the further video in retrospect. So, be enlightened by my infinite wisdom. My sheer infallibility. Indeed. Well, that's bad. Okay. We're gonna eat a frenzy here and a couple of blood vials, but the mob is not aggroed. And this is really terrible. Ooh. Alright, well, I think we're just dead again. Okay, we're switching to the wheel for this shit. We've now wasted a fuckload of time. So that'll be fun. I'll still leave it in because I'm sort of saying intellectually interesting stuff. At least on some level. Oh, if you're curious what I think about steroids in general, steroids or methamphetamines or anything that enhances your performance physically or mentally. If you're a normal person, then don't do them, unless you're a fucking idiot. So that's really simple. Don't do anything that can fuck up your mental state, because your goal in life should be to achieve a perfect mental state, a mental balance, where you yourself are content with how you're thinking. It's still easy to get depressed even if you're in the perfect mental state, especially if the society doesn't value it all, but there are other ways to negate depression. Religion, for example, a good way to negate depression. Even if Even if you're a haughty atheist or whatever, you should probably still think about, let's say, philosophical stuff that has to do with man's creation and origin, even if it has nothing, or development, if you prefer that to creation. It doesn't really make a difference. If you're actually an intellectual person, you will think about it. If you're a dumbass, then maybe you'll say just blindly retarded things that make no sense. But if you're an intelligent person, you will think about it. If you're an intelligent person, you come to the conclusion that atheism is a good thing, or agnosticism is a good thing. That's much more common now. Then that's fine. But if you're just someone that has that conclusion without ever thinking about it, then you're a fucking idiot. So don't be a fucking idiot. Think about it. But that, even thinking about that kind of thing will sort of generate self-preservation instincts in your mind. So it's a good thing to do. For example, Ridley Scott is an atheist. But if you ever watch any of his films, they're all pretty much about God in some respect, or about man's clash with God on some societal level. Even The Martian has all sorts of shit like that in it. Pretty much every Ridley Scott film, past Black Hawk Down onwards. Before that, maybe not as much. Maybe at some point he didn't really care. And I get the impression that his brother was religious when he wasn't. And of course his brother eventually committed suicide. Ironically, let's not say that contradicts me, because nothing could ever contradict yourself. Very well I contradict myself. Famous phrase. But, and Ridley Scott did not have the same viewpoint. Of course, in my case I have 3 brothers, and one of them has Pascal's Gambit, and the other 2 are pseudo-religious, or like modern religious, which to say they go to church every once in a while. And I'm actually religious, but because that's just how I was raised on some level. I guess a good way to think about it is sort of like if I was raised in Latin America. Literally everyone in Latin America is religious. They're not all Catholic. I think it's like 80% Catholic or something, or 95% Catholic maybe. But they're pretty much all religious on some level. And so if you're a person that's like, oh, religion is totally insignificant, only idiots aren't religious. Well, you just wrote off an entire fucking continent, you stupid idiot. You colossal fucking moron. Why did you do that? So it's short-sighted to make wide, enormous, spanning generalizations based on personal opinion, is my basic viewpoint here. I'm having fun talking, so. One thing I always say is, if I'm good at talking, that means I'll suck at playing the game. And if I'm bad at talking on a given day, that means I'll be good at playing the game. So if you're here for gameplay, then you'll be like, what the fuck is this moron? Why doesn't he shut the hell up and play the damn game? Well, because today I felt like talking. I don't know why. There was no impetus behind the talking, other than the action of discourse creates better discourse. So, like, the way you get better at speaking is by talking. Doesn't that make sense? So public speaking is purely a practice thing. It has nothing to do with you being shy or whatever. It's just all practice. So if you want to be the best public speaker ever, well, first you gotta go pay a visit to Hitler and be like, whoa, how'd you do all that shit, man? But beyond that, you wanna practice. So that's the idea. Even if it never won. I did say that, didn't I? Damn. I forgot to switch the wheel. If you have a weapon that staggers this enemy, it becomes a lot easier than just trying to kill it with a fast weapon. Of course, if we had a better gem, we could just kill it in 4 hits and it would have died. Second attempt for sure. Maybe not. Maybe the first attempt as well. But here we are in the Nightmare Frontier, having nightmares. Ironically not caused by invasions. But perhaps solely by my motivation to spiel endlessly about nothing. Let's use the boom hammer instead of using the wheel. I like the boom hammer a lot, so why the hell not? Also, I'm pretty sure I haven't done a boom hammer run, so that means the next run is going to be a boom hammer run. So that became the winner by default. I was going to have an intellectual debate about which weapon to use for a while, but it seems like we've come to the conclusion that boom hammer always wins, because it's the boom hammer. What could be better? I'm kind of focusing on rolls here, so sorry if I stop blabbing. At some point I'll stop blabbing entirely, and then I might actually make progress in the game. But in the short term, if talking is what makes me enjoy myself, then talking I shall do. Talking I shall have. There must be talking. I feel like my points tend to just trail off in random directions. That's just how philosophical shit goes. I don't think that's unique to me. That's a pretty common thing. If you focus on one thing, your argument becomes exceedingly boring. But if you spread it out in a bunch of different directions, it becomes more entertaining to speak about, even if the original point becomes weaker in the process. So my apologies if that happened. I think we're just gonna boom hammer him, then run away and heal, and then repeat. It'll probably kill him in 2 hits. As long as we don't get stuck on a wall. Oh, a little bit preemptive on the shit there. Like so. There you go, no more asshole brain lady. I guess we're not gonna get the blood rock, given this experience. So there's not gonna be any blood rocks on this run. I'm sorry. If your whole purpose in life was to pursue blood rocks, well, I've already got 18 of them. And don't need any more. At least for now. Since brain ladies were annoying me, no need to fight another brain lady. And be further annoyed. Oh, okay. I remember what my original point was going to be. Okay, so if your objective is to, say, hit the most home runs of anyone ever, and there's a clear-cut way to get you to do that, or, and say you're Willie Mays, basically, which, by that I mean you're Barry Bonds, you're young Barry Bonds, you're fast, you have a lot of power, but chances are you'll only hit like 660 home runs in your Exenti career. Well, what if you could hit 90 more? Then wouldn't you fucking do it? And the answer is of course you would. Because there isn't really anything wrong. Well, if you're a competitive person, then there's nothing wrong conceptually with using steroids to enhance your capabilities. Or let's say the Mountain in Game of Thrones. So what if the Mountain took steroids? Isn't that unthinkable? So he could be a larger giant person and be even more likely to beat the shit out of people. Well, if your sole purpose in life is to beat the shit out of people, then wouldn't you want to be better at beating the shit out of people? And the answer is yes. So therefore you would take performance-enhancing drugs. And it's just a logical assessment from that field. It doesn't matter if some small percentage of the audience considers it to be cheating. Like, no one said fucking Mountain's on steroids. Mountain's actors on steroids. No one says Sly Stallone and Arnold Schwarzenegger on steroids, even though they obviously are. So same thing in a professional sport. If your objective is to push the limits of human capabilities physically, then obviously you're going to use things that fuck up the rest of your body and screw up your natural life cycle, so that in your prime, physical prime, you can become an exceptional being, as it were. So while Barry Bonds might not make the Hall of Fame, oh no, he might not make the Hall of Fame, but he'll still be the third, or first to third, best hitter who ever lived. Same thing with Clemens, except Clemens is almost universally regarded as the best pitcher ever. It's pretty much Walter Johnson or Roger Clemens, and Walter Johnson played during dead balls, so pretty much everything favored the pitcher at that point in time. And everything favored the hitter during Clemens' era. So he's pretty fucking good, right? Like, oh, I had the second best career ever. I might not be in the Hall of Fame, but I'm better than everybody who's in the Hall of Fame, so I don't give a shit. There's a Hall of Fame for me. It's called Roger Clemens Memorial Museum. I built it myself. Come visit sometime. That's what Clemens would do. Or Bonds. Bonds is sort of going with the humble route now. It seems like Clemens is still in denial. Bonds is like, oh, I made some mistakes. I used to be an asshole. Because now he's associated with professional sports. He's the batting coach of the Miami Marlins, who is a fucking terrible team, by the way. Who are a fucking terrible team. My apologies for the mild misstep there. So maybe Bonds can go on a apologetic campaign and eventually get in the Hall of Fame as a result in 10 years. But I bet you he still won't, because there's old dumbasses that won't vote for him. They'll be like, we don't want the person with the most home runs in the Hall of Fame, or the person with the most home runs in a single season, or the person with a fucking 609 on base percentage. So, to give you an idea what a 609 on base percentage means, a 400 on base percentage is utterly exceptional in professional baseball. There's usually like 2 or 3 people a year that get that much, but he had that much and 50% more on top of it. Like, in baseball, you're supposed to fail more than half the time, always. But Barry Bonds said, fuck that shit, I'm going to get on base 60% of the time. I'm going to get intentionally walked 123 times this season. Or whatever it was, it's like 129, I think. And the strategy for Barry Bonds was don't pitch to him. Buck Showalter, I don't remember who he was managing at the time, maybe the Yankees. But Buck Showalter, the bases are loaded, end of the game. They're down by 2, or they're up by 2. So the strategy is pitch to Barry Bonds with the bases loaded. You're probably going to lose, almost certainly, because Bonds will just destroy it. Or intentionally walk him with the bases loaded, give the other team a run, and then let the next batter try to beat you. And he failed, and Showalter wins the game. Because he intentionally walks Barry Bonds with the bases fucking loaded. That is like a myth. That is fucking legendary status right there. And would you rather have that? That never would have happened if he was just Willie Mays. But if you're Willie Mays plus Babe Ruth, then you're really something special, aren't you? But end the spiel about baseball and what have you. Alright, that's enough blabbing for now. I guess we could fight Amygdala. I don't know why I'm so ambitious about the talking today, but so I am. So I am.